an inauspicious start. I don't know what happened there. It's because we've got some people here that I need to introduce. Welcome to episode 22 of the Comic Book Crowd. All right. And to my immediate left, I've got Matt Woods and Alan from Climbing Comics, my usual gang that's here all the time. And down below, we got two first-timers to be part of the crowd. We have directly below me, Regie from Regie Collects. Maybe a few of you guys know him. And immediately down that way, we have Philtastic, Phil of Philtastic Comics and Art. So welcome, guys. Thanks for showing up tonight. Regie, Phil, appreciate you showing up. Phil said that he was thinking often about our topic for today, which is our journey through comics.
Oh, yeah.
So he's perfect about that. Reggie has no clue, but that's okay. We'll let him participate anyway. Let's take a quick look and see who we might have here and say hello to them.
Wait, do we have a topic for tonight?
Wellbore started it off. So we have Wellbore. How you doing, Wellbore? He's yippying us. And we have, of course, the OG Tina. How you doing,
Hey, Tina?
Thanks for showing up. And our other steady person here, we have Trev, the shipping guru. Trev, nice to see you here too. Let's see. Usually have people showing up during the show, but we want to catch a few people at least in the beginning. We have Milt. Milt, how you doing? Flowers Comics, yes. Good to see you here. Let's see if we have anybody else. One of my faves here, we have Jerry the Jitterbug. Hey, Jerry, thanks for showing up. Appreciate it, my friend. And let's see. We had Milt. I think that's about it to start off with, so we're ready. So we'll say hello to the other people as they show up. So one of the things here, I was talking to Matt Woods about possible topics. And Matt said, we've talked about, how we started to, read comics and basically our hobby and how we do it. But we never talked about our journey and how it works out. So I thought that today what we'd do is we just kind of open it up and say, hey, how did you first get involved in comics? What comic really caught your eye and so forth? And what was it that got you interested in comics? And then, we'll go on and say, well, what happened as you became an adult and so forth? And I think part of this is important because you hear us giving a lot of our opinions, and me being an old person, my opinion goes back way into the 60s. And other people here are younger and their opinions have to do with their experiences in the 90s, 2000s, etc. So, Matt, you were the guy who came up with this topic. So why don't you start us off? What got you started in comics? What was your first memory of a comic book?
Wait, we're talking about how we got into comic books? Joe, I don't know about this story. I think you made this up. But no, in all honesty, a lot of people have heard me talk many, many times about this comic book subscription of Conan the Barbarian that my mother got me years and years ago. And that is how I got started reading comic books, okay? But I wasn't I lived in a small town. I didn't follow up. I had a 12-month subscription. It ran out. That was 1985 that the subscription ran out. Well, fast forward to around 1994, 95, somewhere in there. I was a senior in high school. And I was up in my grandfather's attic, and I found a box of comic books. And lo and behold, it was that 12-issue run that I had that I still kept. I didn't know I kept it. I think my grandfather was like, hey, Matt's going to want to read these someday. So anyhow, I reread these. Now, guys, I was a high school athlete. I was
Don't
not
show
into
up, Matt. Just talk about comics, okay?
I know, right? But the thing is I just wasn't into comic books. I had nothing against them, but the small town, there were no LCSs. This was the 90s. It was, pre-internet. I mean, the internet was out, but not really by 94.
It's like a John Mellencamp song.
Right, yeah. Anyhow, Pink Houses. But I reread those comic books, and I'm like, son of a gun. Yes, I get it. They're comic books, but this is a darn good story. But the problem was there was a storyline that my subscription ran out in the middle of the storyline, and I really wanted to know how it ended. Well, in the 90s, eBay wasn't a thing. I had no clue that you could even buy back issues. I never even heard of an LCS. So anyhow, life goes on. I go active duty Air Force, travel the world. I'm in college, and I started college late, and I was probably, I'm thinking 27, 28 years old. And my brother, who was moving houses, he goes, hey, Matt, I have all these old comic books of yours. And he threw them at me. And he goes, do something with these. He didn't want to have them anymore because he somehow got these books, but he knew they were mine. He didn't want to throw them away. So again, I'm 27, 28 years old. Again, I have nothing against comic books. I actually think they're kind of cool. I've bought a handful of news racks over the years. I'd read them. I'd enjoy them, but I wasn't a collector. And when I say that, I'm talking 3 a year, like not like this habit of mine. Habit, right? Anyhow. So I reread these again, and I'm like, son of a gun. Like, I am a grown man. I am college educated. At this time, I already had at least 1 degree. And I'm like, these are still really good stories. I wanted to know how that story ended, okay? Because that's right in the middle of it. Well, here's the thing that I've never really talked about in the past. My college roommate was a giant comic book fan. He had all kinds. He had, you limiting me, Joe?
We got to get off early tonight because the Comic Book Community Awards will be on at 10, Matt.
When I get back, brother, I'm talking about my college roommate, okay? So, yes, that is where I'm going to let off. I do talk a lot.
All right. Well, look, we all have different experiences, right? My
right?
First experience.
Don't you want to know?
My first experience of reading a comic book was in the barber shop. Okay.
Barbershop.
My father brought me to the barbershop when I was a kid. And while you waited, there was a table there, right? And in the table, the one thing I remember was there was a lot of Playboy magazines. And I really wanted to pick up the
I
Playboy.
almost said that.
but I picked up the comic book instead, although I was kind of looking at. So I don't remember what any stories were or anything like that. But that was my first experience of picking up a comic book. That's it.
Nice. So they had just like casually like, here's your Playboy right next to your Captain America.
Wow.
I've been in that barbershop. Seriously.
I'm not gonna lie.
What can I tell you? It was Italians in there. You know what I mean?
This is a true story. The first Playboy I ever saw was in the barbershop. I think that's a thing.
But did you finish the story?
But then for me,
I didn't start the story.
It was my best friend John, who I kind of grew up with, and he got into comics. His uncle owned a newspaper stand, so he had all the ins as to when the new comics were coming out and so forth. And he's the guy I bought those comics from for 2 cents a piece when we went to high school. So we've always been together, always been involved with that. So that became kind of my my real introduction into comics was through my best friend John.
Alan, I think it's your turn.
Oh, it's my turn.
Anybody's
Well,
turn.
I thought I had to wait my turn here. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so the trifecta of animated series, Batman animated series, Spider-Man, X-Men. That was my first introduction to these characters. And reading back Batman stories, Batman the animated series actually did a lot of the story arcs like true to the comic book story. So that was my first in. And then when I went to the comic book shop, and it was super intermittent, like every other month, I would get like issue 48 and then issue 102. So I had no idea what happened in between. I think that's where I kind of waxed and waned with comics, but I continued to watch the shows.
That's part of the things in the 60s too, because you went there and you just bought comics as they came out. I mean, you would miss comics all the time because there weren't comic book shops. You'd go to the newspaper stand or to the magazine store or to the grocery store and get the stuff. So you'd miss stuff all the time. And that's when that's when I found out you can subscribe and get those comics folded in half in the mailers. And that's when I started to do that because there were some I didn't want to miss. So Phil, you're probably the youngest in the group here.
Maybe. Let's see.
You and Alan, you guys are like young whippersnappers. So what about your experience? What's the story?
Well, for the longest time, I thought my first comic was Brute Force, the old Marvel comic limited series.
Ooh, I'm sorry.
Hey, look, when I was 10, that was everything you could want. Animals in machines. I never thought about how does a dolphin walk on the land. Bears with bazookas and sharks with buzzsaws. It was great as a 10-year-old. But I found thinking more, my actual first comic I started reading regularly was Ninja Turtle Adventures. I was nuts about Ninja Turtles, and my parents would just be like, oh, here's a Ninja Turtles book. They probably bought me some of the Mirage books that I probably should not have been reading. You know, they just figured, here's a Ninja Turtle, go ahead. But I really didn't get fully into it, I would say, as a collector until a couple years down the road, collecting the Marvel cards, which I knew Spider-Man. I didn't know any of the other characters. It was just my friends were doing it. I was like, all right, let me just get these. And I wound up getting just a whole set over a summer just from buying packs. Finally, an LCS opened up in my town. That was around like when Death of Superman was going on. And I was coming in and I started dipping my toe in like the X-Men water. And the LCS owner was like, you know, you come here like every week. I could put stuff aside for you. And there you go. He hooked me in.
Yes.
And so now you have how many comic books, Phil?
A lot.
We'll leave it at that. Your wife putting them all in boxes and cataloging them. You don't have a number?
It's an ongoing effort. And to that, I plead the fifth, sir.
So, Reggie, you know, we all got involved, and this show kind of started because we all met through your channel. So we want to thank you for that.
Yeah,
you know?
man.
But
yeah, we improved upon the product.
A little bit.
Wow, shots fired.
Duck and cover.
It's because I made those jokes about you finishing the Playboy stories, right?
Yeah, right.
Get it? I respect
There's no
it.
finish to the Playboy stories. You have to understand. Well, if I come down to GarageCon, I'll tell you another Playboy story because I can't do it online here because it's
Whoa.
You know, this is not
Plead the fifth, Joe.
But anyway, but Reggie, you know, we saw you. We kind of know a little bit about your history and that type of stuff, you know. But you know, then you went out and you bought these 10,000 comic books and all that. And you recently have had some great videos on your channel where you go out and you're talking about comics that you bought, you know, and that are the value has either stayed the same or going down or going up a little bit.
Yep.
But you talk about comics that you bought for thousands upon thousands of dollars, right?
Yep.
And that, at least to me, is a bit foreign. It's not something that I consider doing, you know, at least in the multiple thousands of dollars area. So your kind of experience right now is kind of interesting, but we're wondering, like, you know, what was your earlier experience? How did you come about deciding that you liked comics? You know, did you keep comics somewhere, you know, until you became an adult, or did you just kind of get rid of everything and pop back in at some point in time?
Yeah. I mean, I'm one of those guys, man, that when I commit to something, I'm in it. Like I go hardcore, right? So I think my earliest experience with a comic was through my cousin. And it was probably a DC comic just because that's what was out there, right?
Well, that had to be the case.
And you know, clearly that cured me of DC, that early experience. And I found myself looking at a lot of the Marvel
where's that
comics.
mute button here? Wait a minute.
So I found
Getting
myself,
nasty.
you know, reading Marvel comics, and I honestly don't know how. Right? I think it probably stemmed from the fact that as a kid, I didn't have really a whole lot of cousins. Right? I was the youngest child in the family, and I was also, I think, a big reader. You know, I was around a lot of adults and I had a big vocabulary, and I used to read a lot, was an advanced reader. And I think just that early exposure, them wanting to give me something to read, I somehow ended up getting comics and ended up at a comic shop. And I remember my grandmother and mother driving me to comic shops and like going in with me and standing by the door while I just looked around and bought stuff. And I eventually got a subscription where it would come to the house, and it would come in a plastic blue and white like envelope, right? And it was Web of Spider-Man. That was the run, right? So to Alan's point, I would go to the comic shop like sporadically as an adolescent, but I always had the Web of Spider-Man coming for a period of time until it ran out. And surprisingly, I have a lot of those books still, the Web of Spider-Man books. I used to spend summers with my great grandmother in Royal Oak, Michigan. I'm sorry, in Roseville, Michigan. And there was an antique store on the corner. And I would take bottles from her house and go exchange the bottles in Michigan for 10 cents, and then I would go to the antique store and buy comics. And I just consumed a lot of comics. And like a lot of people, I was in and out of comics. I did it as an adolescent. I was out of it for a while. I was back into it in the 90s, out of it until 2005. And then, out of it again until 2017, 2018. So I've had a long history with comics. And I think the longest stint is probably where I am right now, which is 2017 to the present.
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. You've had a lot of ins and outs, and I want to get that for a second. But you mentioned something to me that I thought, for me was somewhat foreign, as a kid growing up in the 60s.
Yeah.
Not so much with my parents, and even my best friend John's parents, but some others, You said that was it your mother and your grandmother, brought you to the store? Your aunt, whatever, brought you to the store?
Yeah. Yeah.
At that time, one of the reasons I benefited from the 2-cent comics that I got was because when my best friend John and I went to high school, his mother basically told him, you've got to sell your comics. You got to get rid of your comics because you're going to high school now.
Yep.
My mom was okay, except when we moved, she said I had to get rid of some of my comics because we're moving, unfortunately. But so there were parents that always thought that comic books were things that either you shouldn't read at that time. Okay, this is the 60s, basically, that you either shouldn't read or you're going to have to outgrow them because they're just for kids.
Yeah.
So that didn't seem to be your case. I don't know if anybody else had any parent or relative that said that they shouldn't be reading comics at some point in time.
So
no.
My mother had me when she was 17, right? So super young mom. I was raised by my mother and my grandmother, and then my great grandmother also was a huge influence on me as well. And all three of them used to give me money and allow me to go to either the antique store or to a comic shop or to a con. I remember getting dropped off at cons. They were fine with me reading comics, just nothing with curse words, but they had no problem with me reading comics. It was not discouraged at all.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Because for us, we used to sit like on the stoop, for people to know what a stoop is, and read our comic books. And, we go to the store, we get them, we, take our 10 cents and then our 12 cents and go buy the stuff.
This is why you don't understand buying, multi-$1,000 comics, because you bought them for cents. And you're really just rubbing it in. Like, I really am offended by this whole topic.
Thank you for saying that, because I've been feeling he's rubbing it in for years.
We have to pay real money for our stuff, bro. We didn't pay 12 cents from scamming a buddy, okay?
Hey, I had to get rid of half of my comics. Who knows what was in those comics?
You ripped off John.
You feel sorry for me, man.
Matt,
I feel sorry for John.
You and your mother and whoever ran a scam on this kid and got him for all these books.
Yes.
Oh, she's in on it. I never thought of that.
Yeah. Oh, she was definitely on. Is there a statute of limitations? He is an attorney, which is probably why he's talking about this stuff now, because the statute of limitations has run out. But I feel like
80 years or something. Yeah.
Wait, hold on, Matt. How much did you pay for your AF-15?
Wait, I don't own an AF-15.
ASM1. ASM1.
Spider-Man #1, ASM1.
Oh, my ASM one. I paid. Well, truthfully, I paid $50. I gave the guy a $49 tip.
Scam.
You
knew what Phil-tastic was asking you.
No, actually, I was like, I don't know an AF-15. No, I forgot about the ASM.
For my client, Matt Wood.
My ASM's over there. But
Alan, have you run any scams on little children? Because it seems to be with this.
I have not.
The elderly Alan?
I'm the angel of this group.
My friend John was born one day after me. We were the same age.
Well, you're just smarter, Joe. So you ripped him off, okay? Way to brag about that. Yeah.
But let's go on to Regie. Apparently, you got out of comics and into comics like, I don't know, 20 times. It sounded like.
Yeah.
But if you was there something that happened, or was what was the rationale? What happened during those times? You think that made you
Jessica Wade,
did you, like, discover girls or
Jessica Wade?
Okay,
that was her name. I was like,
wow.
She eventually had another name, didn't she?
Oh man, talk to my mother. Her name was Jessica Wade. She was like the greatest thing ever in high school, right? That's why I got away from comics. I was like, I have to not do this nerdy stuff because this is not the jam, right? She was a cheerleader, basketball player, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's why I got away from it. But yeah, but now I have a wife that actually encourages me to read comics because she always knows where I am, like in this room somewhere, right? Like legitimately. But no, for me, there, you know, and someone asked me this question the other day when I did another interview. There wasn't something that happened that forced me out of comics. It was more like just life. You know, it was discovering girls and eventually going off to college. And then I was working as a professional, trying to earn a living and afford enough money to go to happy hour on Wednesday and then the club on Saturday, right? It wasn't, I was doing other stuff, right? Focusing on life, got married, all that kind of stuff. And then, so it just kind of waxed and waned, but it was always there. And one of the great things, Joe, getting back to part of your earlier question, is that my family actually took care of my collection for me. When I went away to college, my parents stored my collection in the basement off the ground where it was protected. And in 2005-ish, when I came back into the hobby, it was because my parents drove from Michigan to Maryland where I was and was like, here, these are now yours again. You have responsibility for it. They gave me my entire collection. That's why I was back in it for a while. And then again, they moved with me until 2017, 2018, when I was back in the hobby, started the YouTube channel. My wife bought me a small collection, and that's what started it all over again.
Why doesn't my wife buy me any collection?
Because you bought yours for 12 cents.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting.
It's all night. I'm here all night, brother, with that joke. Okay? But it, you know, it's just been this thing of being often into comics, but it's always been, you know, to me, something that was always there. There was always this undercurrent of comics because Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk, honestly, are ever present wherever you go. They're ever present, right? You can't go to McDonald's without seeing that stuff. Grocery store, it's everywhere. So it was always there. And I'm thankful that I had that wonderful foundation as a kid to now have a YouTube channel, to have friends around the world to chat with, you know?
That's great. Yeah, I mean, Matt, what about you? You seem to have gotten involved in comics really kind of late.
I really was late. So you can say there was a break between me being 8 years old and whatever until 28 years old. But once I started collecting, you know, in around 2003, 4, I never looked back. Now, but when I say that, there were moments in my life where I went inactive, and I always had a pull list. I always stored them. I always kept them, but I just might not be reading them. I might not be checking previews to see what new books are coming out. I just kept my pull list. So there's times where my interest will ebb and flow. And like right now it's at an ebb. Okay. It's going really well. But, or wait, is that the right use of ebb? I think it is. Okay. Flows down or flow up. I don't know. Ebb and flow. Okay. But it's one of them. That's kind of funny. I've lived my entire life and I don't know if the ebb is the high or the low. And I know I'm not the only person.
Flow is the high.
Yeah.
Flow is not the high. Flow might be the high, but not low. But anyhow, I know I'm not the only person in the panel that didn't know that right now. But anyhow, so yes, it will ebb and flow. But and then honestly, Reggie, you know, I got to thank you, but this isn't going to be a rah Reggie show because, well, like I said, we've improved the product. But there was a point in my life where I was reorganizing this and I was, just reevaluating my life, and I kept watching comic book collecting YouTube channels. I just kept searching them on my iPad as I'm sitting here trying to organize this collection up here that honestly, I guess it was an ebb period where I wasn't active. Okay. I was just storing comics, but not really organizing them. Well, this dude just kept popping up and he was awesome. And that guy's name was Comic Tom. So I kept watching his videos all of the time. But there was this other dude. He was kind of annoying. Okay. He couldn't pronounce the word Galactus. Okay. I don't even know what he was saying.
Jim Mint?
Yeah. Jim Mint. I like Jim Mint. But anyhow, no. So Reggie just kept popping up and he just kept talking about things that I was absolutely interested at that moment. And from that point on, man, I just been interested in comic books, paying attention, started my own YouTube channel, things like that. So I'm at a high right now on my comic book, like an all-time high. I've never been this engrossed into this hobby as I am right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So Reggie, I just want to go back to something you said. Your parents took care of your comic books. My comics were in a box, the half that I kept in the attic.
Yeah.
So the heat,
Yeah.
the cold, it was like, so they weren't in the best of shape when I got them. Some of them were okay, but a lot of them were not. But
No, I mean, I'm definitely thankful for my
2
parents,
cents
man.
or 12 cents anyway.
Definitely thankful for my parents, because I mean, as we just saw, someone's parents threw their books out. I didn't, but my mother probably still has our Michael Jackson jackets somewhere. Like my mother, sentimental, important things she will save. Beanie Babies for my sisters, she has those. She brought those out recently at a holiday, so she takes care of the stuff that's important to us.
That's
and I'm thankful.
If Reggie's mom is watching, we need pictures.
What's funny is that there is a picture of me with Incredible Hulk as like a 3, 4, 5-year-old, something like that. So there are photos, and yes, I did have hair as a young man.
Don't believe
one
it.
glove. Yeah, it's the black leather with the zippers that scratch you when you wear it.
One glove, one G, and a full
Reggie,
head of hair.
and at GarageCon, Reggie's definitely going to do the moonwalk for us. So.
Absolutely not. I'll leave that to Matt Wood.
Hey, I have a degree in dance. I might pull it out.
So, Phil, what about you? Have you gone? What's your story of in and outs on comic books?
I left the hobby for about 5 or 6 years, and it was college. When I was first getting into it, it was my dad taking me to shops and to shows. I think it was just more because it was like my dad wasn't into comics. He always used to tell me, "Oh, by the time I was 16, I was grown up and stopped reading them." And I was like, "I don't understand that." But in high school, it was just more of me and like my best friend at the time. And then when I get to college, it's just, lack of money, lack of, hey, I want to go out and do other things, that type of thing. I also, mostly in high school, was reading comics to kind of learn how to draw. Something I didn't know freaked my mom out because, look, you're talking end of the 90s, you're talking Cable, whose guns were bigger than him at times. But when I got to college, one thing you guys might not know, my undergrad was in visual arts. And
great, awesome.
Going into visual arts, you say, hey, look, I really want to be a animator. I want to draw comics. Like, well, we focus more on fine art. So for that, when I got in, I was like, I'm going to look more towards fine art. And I kind of forgot about comics. I didn't get back into it until about a year after I graduated, when I was finally working and had extra money.
That's good. Yeah. Alan, how about you?
I actually had the longest break, right? So probably when I was 8 to 10 is when I kind of like was in the, I guess, heyday of collecting, and it was comics, cards, all of that stuff, Pogs, anything related to comics or had comic pictures on it. So that was my thing. And then from 8 until, probably in my 30s, like there was like a huge dry spell. And I think with the movies coming out, everyone really wanting to like get back into the stories, and my nieces who got really into the Spider-Verse, that kind of brought me back in. So I'm a little bit different. I haven't gone in and out too many times, but it's just like one long drought of lack of comics.
So Reggie, my situation was a little bit similar to yours in terms of comics were never gone.
Yeah.
But also it was college, basically. When I take a look at my 12-cent comics and all those like that, they start to peter out around 67, 68. And I went into college, it's in 1968, height of Vietnam War protests, whole bit like that. There was so much going, the music scene, there was so much going on. And I lived down in Lower Manhattan in the Village, it just was a whole different world. And so comics didn't seem to mean that much at that point. But then, the Saturday morning cartoons, the movies, Superman the movie, Batman 80, all the stuff like that, I used to watch every show. I still watch. I just watched Alan, you like this. I just watched the Justice League Dark animated movie the other night and said that's really good. I like that movie. I think about you every time I watch that movie. And so to me, they were always there. It always something that I thought about, at least the characters and all that, if it wasn't the comics, you know. But now I want to say the one reason I got back in around 2006, 2007, and be interested to see, you know, what caused you guys to get back involved with that. But I got involved because I was a Boy Scout leader. My son was a Boy Scout, and there was a big Boy Scout shop in the Empire State Building. It was on the 4th floor. So, and I worked down around 23rd Street. So I used to walk up there sometimes to buy stuff, you know, for the scouts or for the troop. And there was a, I forget the name. It was Jim Something's Comic Book World was across the street. So I noticed it a few times. So then I went, and he had new comics and older comics as well, just like any, you know, comic book LCS or whatever. So I decided one day, I had a little bit of time at lunch, and I decided to go in there. And I saw the cover of the first copy, #1 of All-Star Superman. And it just kind of like caught my eye. I didn't buy anything. I just looked around and left. Next time I went up there, I went back in there. I sorted it out. I saw it again. And I think it was like maybe the third time I went up there. I went into the store. I said, I'm buying this thing. And I bought it. And then I ended up buying the rest of the issues and so forth. And that got me started, you know. And Reggie, I don't know if I told you this. Some of the other guys know this, but I was a big Marvel fan growing up, you know.
What happened?
And the first thing I did was buy Fantastic Four, X-Men, Avengers, but I didn't like them. I didn't know what was going on, except for Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I collected Spider-Man for a very long period of time after that. Just recently, I stopped buying them, you know, for different reasons. But so I gravitated back to DC, you know, and I was, one of the things that got me actually intrigued in comic books was when they started bringing the Justice Society back in to the Justice League. These were the two that caused me to subscribe, basically, because I didn't want to miss these, right? And so I started buying Justice League again. And then I, you know, now and then I bought some other comic books and that type of thing, you know, with respect to that. But basically, that's how I got back into it, was that one comic book really caught my eye. And the story itself, the 12 issues. I mean, the animated movie is good, but the 12 issues is much deeper. There's much more of a story to it. And I said, damn, this is good stuff. And that's what got me started again in there. So I don't know if anybody else has a story like that. Was there something that got you back in at a particular time, a comic book or something like that?
For me, Wolverine Origin.
Ooh.
I had just started working again, and I started my first job, I should say, after college. I worked at a bank. I don't even know how I heard about it, but I heard, hey, the origin of Wolverine is finally being told. I remember they were trying to sell it as the greatest story never told. And there had been a shop. There had been a shop not too far from me, and I just kind of walked in, picked that up, and you know, there was a bit of a delay between issues, so I would always just kind of pop in because I didn't have a pull list. I didn't know when they were coming out, and I was like, yeah, you know, let me just kind of dabble a little bit. I went gradually back into filling some of the holes in my collection as far as X-Men goes and Wolverine. And then I was like, you know, let me try some of the stuff I never read, you know, the first time around, Avengers, gradually going into DC. And then it kind of blew up from there.
That's great.
It's a great time. Great time to pick it back up.
Oh, yeah.
Alan, how about you? You have something like that?
A little bit. So it was actually driven by the love of the first Into the Spider-Verse movie by my two nieces and nephew, right? They were super into it. I remember it was almost Halloween time, and they were like getting all their costumes ready. So I went to my LCS. I had to look it up, and because I haven't gone to an LCS in years. So went there, picked up a couple of Spider-Gwen, Miles books, and then I ended up picking up a couple things for myself. One of which was like, Justice League Dark. And then I started realizing that like there's a lot of stories and things that's not necessarily Marvel or DC or Image. So I kind of really got into lots of the independent stories there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what got me in. started a pull list like not too long after that.
Matt or Reggie, any specific book or series that got you in at some particular time?
Well, it wasn't. Sorry, did I just cut you off, Reg?
No, brother, go for it.
It wasn't an exact story. It's kind of continuation. What I said, like my brother threw me these old comic books that I had, and I'm like, I was really into. It was really my college roommate. Now, my college roommate I'd known since high school. Okay, he was a couple years older than me, but just a good dude. But he always went to his LCS, okay, like twice a month, and he picked up. I mean, seriously, his stack was like, I don't know, probably a foot thick of just
in
comic
college.
books. Yeah.
Whew.
Did you work?
I never studied.
Well, there's a couple things went to that. Like, I was a different type of college kid. So was he. We actually bought a house.
What is that? Wait a minute. What does that mean? Come on.
No, I mean we worked all throughout college. Like we had full-time jobs and stuff. But
Matt Woods was a grown man in college. That's why he went
seriously,
a little late.
I was. Yeah. And same thing with my buddy. But no, like we actually bought our house. We bought a duplex. We lived in one half and we rented out the other half. Like we were running all kinds of games back then. So
Scams.
he had the money. Yep.
But sounds like a sitcom.
Scams.
Scams, yeah. But anyhow, hey, I'm not arguing. But anyhow, so I asked him, hey, how do I find the rest of this Conan run? There you go, Jackson. Jackson Roykirk said I didn't say Conan enough. He's still sober. But anyhow, he turned into a drinking game. But anyhow, so he told me about eBay and all this other stuff. And honest to Pete, like the dude, like opened up a whole world to me. In fact, he ended up buying his own LCS whenever we were still rooming together. And that's where my pull list was coming from for quite a few years. Like just a good dude introduced me to the hobby part of comic books, where something I just didn't know existed before.
That's great.
New Avengers. 2005, 2006, that New Avengers run. I was buying that book from a comic shop in Waldorf, Maryland. My parents came and dropped my collection off. And there was a comic shop in part of my territory because I was a sales rep at the time. And I went into the shop, looked around a couple of times, didn't buy anything, but I somehow picked up New Avengers and the Sentry. And I was so confused by that Sentry introduction because it was like, is he an old character? Like I was super intrigued. Is he an old character? Is he a new character? Like, what is this? New Avengers still to this day is one of my favorite reads. I just enjoy that entire story arc. And that's what got me hooked. And at one point I had an extra bedroom in my house in Maryland, and they had all of the connecting covers for New Avengers, and I pinned with thumbtacks. I pinned to the plastic, not the comics. But I pinned to the wall the connecting covers, and I still have that entire run right across the room. That was a series that I just enjoyed that one.
Oh, that's good. Well, now that we've gotten to this particular point in time, we're all involved in comic books, YouTube comic book situation, and so forth like that. So here's the seminal question as we move towards the Comic Book Community Awards show. Why are you still in the hobby today? There's a lot of different reasons people are in the hobby, right? Some are speculators, some are readers, some are collectors, some just are going down whatever rabbit hole someone throws their way. Some are completists and just can't get it out of their system and they need some psychological help. What's your story, Alan?
So my story is that I am trying to, and I told you about the gaps in storylines growing up. So right now, the reason why I stayed in comics is mainly to fill in those gaps, to actually get back into the stories and kind of reread a lot of things that I didn't read before. But the reason I stayed, not to be too sentimental, but yeah, to be sentimental, was because of groups like this, right? People like you guys. The reason why I kind of stuck into the hobby was because when I went to the LCS, I would talk to people that we did not know each other at all, but we would just be hovering around a certain book and start chatting. Like, I didn't know this person, they didn't know me, but we had a connection that was independent from the rest of my life, right? And so I found that that was like the main reason I stayed. And like, I know I've slowed down in making content, but the reason why I got into that was because I felt like I wanted to speak more about the things that were like exciting me, and that's why I ended up staying.
Alan, it's okay about the content as long as you keep on coming on the comic book crowd. That's fine. That's going to be the count.
I'll say this: I learned more about grading comics from Alan's channel than anywhere else.
Thank
Just
you.
the in-depth
Fantastic series.
stuff he was doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
The only thing, it made me feel really inadequate, though, I have to say. That's the one thing. Made me feel really inadequate as a grader.
That was such a well done, well thought out, well presented YouTube series on how to grade comic books. That I wasn't. I'm still blown away by that
And
series,
go to Planet
Alan.
Comics to watch it if you haven't seen it, because it really is a great tutorial. Really,
Yeah. Thank you.
even better than the stuff you'd see on Regie. On
Impossible.
Impossible. Come on, throw me a bone. Throw me a bone, Reg. Throw me a bone.
So I want to piggyback on something that Alan said. Like, realistically, and this is my opinion, right? Guys don't have much, right? We have alcohol, we have sports, right? Women, those are the things that bring guys together, right? Work, right? And it's like, growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends that did comics, but now through YouTube, I have friends everywhere, and I have an ability to talk about comics whenever I want, and sometimes when I don't want, right? But to me, to Matt's point, we may ebb and flow, we may wax and wane with buying comics, maybe even reading comics. But I think to some degree, it's the relationships that I have with people that are enduring, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I get messages from Tina. Hey, what's going on? Matt sends me a message. Hey, what's going on? Right? Like, I talk to people almost every morning. I get something from Mark in Canada saying something to me about something, right? I get Chris Bigger sends me messages every day of news articles and things like that. It is honestly the community and the connectivity that exists between the people that keeps me here, right? And that's part of what motivates me to continue creating content and doing live streams for us to come together and chat and have a good time. And then, now the buying of comics, I can't remember the last time I spent thousands of dollars on a comic. I honestly can't, right? Because it's more about the people than it is about the comics. But it was the comics that brought us here. But why do we stay? At least for me, it comes down to the people. Leading right into the Comic Book Community Awards. Let's go. No, Jesus, sorry.
You have a few minutes left. I'll piggyback upon that as well, because lately, especially when Spider-Man started going downhill, and that was in 2022, basically all killed off, but then came back to life, and those were my two main comic books. I found that I was spending a lot of money on buying comic books every week, but I wasn't enjoying a lot of it, and I wasn't reading some of it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so I decided to basically stop, not entirely. And I still buy some here or there, but no pull list, no big number of comic books on a weekly basis. Instead, I started to focus more in on my older comics and some of the things I had, and saying, can I fill in this run? Just like you, Al. Can I fill in this run and so forth? And I'm doing some of that, and I'm enjoying that hunt, looking for that type of stuff. But I agree. One of the things, we've gone through, I've retired, we've gone through sort of a change, in life and so forth, both in terms of, no more work. So no more work friends, as you mentioned, Reggie. I drink occasionally, but I don't get drunk anymore because I don't particularly like it, even though when I was younger, it was fun, And women, I got one. Sticking with that one, right? So that doesn't leave me too much. And I was going around, and I don't really have, where I live right now, where I am here in New York, I have very little interaction with people. other than my wife. I mean, because all my connections, other than the church a little bit, have really kind of stopped.
Yeah.
So you guys are my connection, and again, I agree with you. One of the reasons sometimes I think about, I don't want to do this YouTube channel anymore, but then I start talking to people. I say, hey, this is a great idea. Let's try to do something with this, with the DC Watch guys, with Pretty Fly and Dave. We've done things together. They throw ideas my way. Chris Biggard, the same thing.
Yep.
We're gonna do something on Sunday night. We're gonna put something together to put out hopefully next week, and that invigorates me.
Yep. Yep.
So looking through the older comics, doing that hunt, that's kind of my comic book collecting right now. A few new comics. If I find something that I like the Conan comic book that Matt Woods finally got me to take a look at. I read the first issue. That's actually pretty good.
Told you, Joe. Reggie, you need to start reading Conan.
I think that might be an ongoing theme. I don't know. We'll listen to what Matt and Phil have to say, but to me, that's an important part of the whole thing. I mean, seeing you guys down at New York Comic Con, I couldn't go to Garage Con, but seeing everybody at New York Con, I met like a bunch of other people I hadn't met before there.
Instant friends.
Yeah.
Instant friends.
Gary, Matt and I went to see Gary B up, which has a big channel. He's a good friend of the Conan guy, basically. We went up there to give him presents for his birthday. And we were both in the same hotel. We called up. We said, we're here. And we spent the next day together. But so Gary came with coffee. We sat down, what's it, Matt? Maybe 3 hours. We had never met.
Oh, at least. Yeah.
I'd never met him before, but I've spoken to him so many times, been on shows with him.
Yep.
We spoke like we knew each other for years.
Yep.
3 hours nonstop.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's really a big part of collecting for me, like the hobby anyway, for me right now as well. Yeah. So
Matt Woods, I don't know if you can top that.
You can't.
I think we just need a bro hug.
You can't top that, Phil.
There's no way, because how am I not gonna like basically just piggyback off of that? But the reason I stayed into comic books, Joe, I sincerely enjoy the reads. Okay, I love the art, I love the stories, I love the creativity. What are they going to do with this character next? A new team comes on, they have a completely different direction. There's always something interesting in comic books. All right, this title's not doing so well. Well, I'll put it down for now and I'll pick up this one. But that's what kept me in comic books. That's not what is keeping me active in the community. Like, I don't mind flying out to California for a 4-hour event to go hang out with some friends, in the comic book community. Okay, 2 of them are in this panel. Okay, got Al right here. And then there was Al Mista, there was John Casper, there was Coach T, Matt Stivoletti. There's so many great people. Regie, I can't forget his name. But yeah, then guys, I've gone to New York to hang out with Gary. I've gone to Rhode Island to hang out with Joe. I've gone to North Carolina a couple times, hang out with Regie and the crew. Okay, I mean, I can't say everyone's name, but that to me is so enjoyable, so much fun. Like, and you hit it right on the head, Joe. You've never met these people face to face, and all of a sudden you're just talking like you've known them forever, because there's something unique about this platform, about how these interactions work, where you feel you get full relationships. Phil, the first time I ever met him in person, I gave the guy a hug because we had talked so much on Instagram. And I met him over in New Jersey at Dave, where Phil lives. Okay. Yeah. Like not far from, what is it? A couple miles from your house. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's just, I don't know. I don't go hugging dudes. Okay. Let's just get that out of the way. But you know what? Phil's a great guy. I'm like, I'm giving him a hug. So,
but if it weren't for comics, that never would have happened.
Never.
It's
never
amazing.
would have met half these people. Yeah.
It's amazing.
So what about you?
Well, I think you've all said a lot as far as community goes. And that's what keeps me on YouTube. As far as actual comics, though, it's mostly to annoy my wife. No, to be honest with you, this is a question I've been thinking about for a while. And I think I've been overanalyzing it a little bit, because I realized throughout my collecting hobby, the times when I was kind of going harder with comics, it's when there were other things going on that I just didn't want to think about or address or anything like that. Now, since meeting my wife, my pull list has gone from this to this. And of course, since we had our son, it's gotten a lot more focused.
Sure.
So I'm in a point now where there's certain characters I'm done with. Like I don't know that I could read another Batman story. I don't know that I could read another Spider-Man story. It's just, I feel like these mainstream characters are being played a little too safe. That's one of the reasons that I've enjoyed the Krakoan X-Men, because I was like, okay, wow, this is finally something different. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird. As comic book fans, we all say we want something different, but we still want it the same. And I'm like, no, give me something new. Reggie, you mentioned New Avengers. We kind of plugged in around that same time. I remember going back into specifically Marvel Comics and saying, okay, well, these are slightly different. Daredevil was much different than the Daredevil I remembered. Bendis's run was much different than anything else I'd ever seen. X-Men at that point, they're all wearing leather jackets and dropped the masks. I want something new. So right now with the hobby, again, I've focused on my mainstream stuff. I've jumped more into more indie stuff, and even cutting down on the stuff I've collected throughout the years and trying to finally, I don't want to say get rid of them, but part with them.
Okay. Well, that opens up to more to discuss, but we agreed that we'd end this live stream in time for people to go over to the Comic Community Awards and see who's been nominated. So I want to thank the chat. Everybody in the chat was really great. There was a lot of discussion. I tried to bring some up when I could. I'm sorry. There were some questions, but they were not the type of questions we really needed to answer in the chat. So I think we were okay with that. I want to thank Regie so much for participating in our discussion today. You added a little bit to it. I think it was okay.
I enjoyed it, brother. Thank you
really,
for having me.
Sincerely,
It's a lot of fun having you, Reggie.
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
And Phil,
A lot of fun.
thanks again. Hope
Thanks
you guys
for having me
consider
anytime.
coming back some other time. My usual
Yes.
compatriots, Matt and Alan, as usual, you guys are great. Thanks so much. And we'll say goodbye to everybody right now. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.